Hey everyone, good evening. Zhao here. Tonight we have with us Dave Swartz, the founder of the brand new Indiegogo campaign Confederate Monster, previously of Feast and Famine fame, and I believe your first one was Atlas Origins, correct?
That is correct. That is correct. You've done your research.
Well, luckily it was all on your website.
There
Made it nice and easy.
you
So, Confederate Monster, let's get into it real quick. First of all, I see only 3 days old. You've already hit 40%. It looks like it's proven to be pretty popular.
Yeah, things are going really, really well with the campaign. I had a silent goal of hitting 1,000 in the first day, and we exceeded that by almost $400. So I was pretty happy with that, and I'm very happy with how day 2 and 3 have gone.
Awesome. So, why don't you tell everyone a little bit about the book?
Sure, absolutely. So, Confederate Monster in a nutshell is Frankenstein meets the Civil War. So, in the story, we follow Igor after the events of the original book, and he has now since traveled to America and has reestablished himself as a reconstructive surgeon named Dr. Daniel Schmidt. So, he is kind of hiding amongst the elite of the Southern Confederacy until they find out that he isn't who he says he is, and he was once actually tied to this tale of bringing back a dead body from Europe. So they convince him rather brutally to reanimate their dead soldiers so that they can turn the tide of the war in their favor.
That's a pretty interesting setup. I'm kind of curious. Have you always been into like sort of the romantic gothic horror type genre, or is this? Did you sort of find yourself here in a roundabout way?
Well, I think there's always been something in my heart for that kind of genre, this kind of horror gothic time period. I've always been a huge fan of Dracula, that sort of turn of the century kind of era. I thought was just very interesting for monster lore, monster stories. I At the time, when I was doing Feast or Famine, I had pitched a bunch of different stories at the same time. Actually, I pitched Confederate Monster at the same time as I pitched Feast or Famine. And actually, I was really trying to just push myself as a writer. My first book, as you mentioned, Atlas Origins, was a superhero story. So after I finished that book, I asked myself, hey, what else can I do? What other types of genres have I not explored? And so I decided let's write a story for sci-fi, let's write a story for horror, and I think I wrote a couple other stories for adventure, and so I guess for me the natural thing for my horror story was to revisit the Frankenstein character, because I always loved the Frankenstein character, and I felt like there was a lot more that could be done with it.
So, as I'm looking at the campaign here, it says book issues 1 through 3. So are these going to be 3 individual floppies, or are they sort of like episodes 1, 2, 3 all bound into a graphic novel format?
So they're going to be individual floppies, and then we're going to do 2 crowdfunders. So we're going to do 1 crowdfunder right now, which is about midway through. I'm almost done with issue 3 to get the first thing done, and then we're going to get into the second half, which is issues 4, 5, and 6. And then when we do the second crowdfunder, which will be probably either later this year or early next year, we will, have a really nice collected edition of all 6 issues together, as well as the additional 3 floppies of 4, 5, and 6.
Oh, very cool. And I happened to catch you on Ryan Wynn's Inkalong stream last night. And one of the big standouts about the campaign is this early bird bonus.
Yeah, there's only 3 left. We started out with 25, and there's only 3 left. So it's a little bit of everything. You get a little bit of swag, a little bit of art. You get all the books, and you get an exclusive magnet that you're not going to be able to get in any other perk combo. Plus, if that wasn't enough, you get 10% off. So I knocked
nice
off the price.
Very cool.
Like I said, there's only 3 left, so I would grab one if you're waiting.
All right, and tell us about. Let me put it this way: which of these levels, aside from the early bird bonus, that I'm sure will be sold out very soon, what would you say is like the essential level to back for someone who's just getting into your work?
Sure. So I am actually kind of partial to the Ultra swag combo. I know that that's sort of going all the way to the end there, but you get a lot of stuff with that for a really good price. So with that one, you get a T-shirt, a hat, a sticker, a coaster, all 3 of these floppy books, plus 4 colored prints.
Nice.
Getting a lot of stuff for a pretty good price. Plus, the nice thing about this featured perk or this perk in particular is when we get into stretch goals, no matter what happens with the stretch goals, they're just going to get added on to this perk totally free.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah, so this one is a really good option. But one of the things I've been telling a lot of people, the great thing about Indiegogo is you can kind of customize and build your own custom package. There's a lot of different options and things to choose from. So what I've been telling people is start with the books, and then when you get into the checkout, you can scroll down, and everything is included as add-ons. So if you want to just build your own custom perk package that way in the checkout, that's a really good option and a good way to go.
Oh, very cool. And there's another one that really interested me. Here we go. For $50, become the undead.
That's right. Yeah, it's a really interesting perk. I did this for my last Indiegogo for Feast or Famine. That time we did get drawn as an alien in the book. This time I'm going to draw you as either an undead Confederate soldier or as a Union soldier fighting the undead horde.
That's a great idea. What's the feedback that you've gotten from this perk so far?
So far, everyone's very excited. I think the people that are most excited about it are still trying to figure out how they want to arrange everything, because they want a lot of different things. So they're trying to figure out how they can do it all. But that's one of the things that I've been really trying to do with this campaign is to make sure that I'm passing on the savings to the supporters. I've had a lot of people tell me so far that my prices are pretty low. And I want it to be that way. I designed it so that the fans are really feeling like they're going to get a really good return on their investment. Plus, I understand there's a lot of comic books out there on crowdfunding right now, and it's difficult to choose, how you're going to spend your money. So I wanted to be able to give you a little bit of a break, so that you can get, what you really want.
Yeah, for me. Now I'm a little different than most people. I know a lot of people love the swag. I'm kind of like so on it. But for me, it seems like a lot of people really want to support the artist, and not only that, but I think people kind of want recognition from it. Even if you go back to like the Renaissance and the Medici and everything. Well, of course, they put their name on everything, and like they want to support an artist. Oh, and we'll put you in our giant church, and so it all relates to them. For me, this is like the perfect modern way to do that, because I want to give you some money, but you know what? You could see I did, because I am that zombie.
Yeah, I think it's a fun way of immortalizing the supporters in the story. Hell, I would love it if we had enough backers for this tier that I could just fill the page with just faces of all the backers. That would be great.
That's very cool. And let me see, where's the other one? And then the large commission. So is the large commission only for Confederate Monster characters, or
Nope. That one is any character that you want. So you can just choose a regular pop culture character, your favorite character, or you can choose a character that maybe you created yourself. I've actually had that question a couple times already. People that are just really interested to see if I would give them a take on their original character. And if you've got good reference, sure, yeah, absolutely, I'll do that for you.
Oh, nice. So I'm kind of curious, are the worlds of Confederate Monster and Feast and Famine connected, or are they separate?
That's an interesting question. I don't think I've been asked that yet. I don't really have any plans to make them connected. However, there's no reason why they couldn't be connected one day. I'm open to it.
And a question that I ask a lot of artists and writers too is, when you think of comics, do you think of so for example, this is going to be a 6-issue series, right?
Right.
Do you see the story ending at issue 6, or do you think of comic book stories sort of more as like Viking sagas, that it's just more and more stories in to some extent, the way the big two have traditionally done things, although with you in control, you could finish it off whenever you want. How do you tend to view the stories?
Sure. So for me, I always like to keep them open-ended. As a reader, a viewer of entertainment, I always hate it when things feel too definitively, concluded, or if the characters are killed off or anything like that. I mean, if it serves the story, I understand. But I like the possibility of allowing these characters in this universe to continue on, even if it's in the minds or the hearts of the fans who love it and support it. So for Feast or Famine, I put a stinger on the end of that story, to kind of leave it open ended. For Confederate Monster, so far I think I've written about 4 different stingers. So I got lots of different directions I could take the story. But I definitely am going to keep this one open ended, really open ended. Intentionally, because there's a lot of different things I could do with it. One idea that was floated in a conversation I had not too long ago is exploring other monsters within the universal monster universe. So who knows, maybe I'll introduce 1 or 2 of those other characters at some point.
That would be quite interesting.
Right.
So in looking over your website, you have a very sort of traditional art background. It looks like you did a lot of was it freelance or your own company that you were doing a lot of the corporate work?
Yeah, so I began my career just as a graphic designer at a marketing company, and after a couple of years, I worked my way up to creative director.
Oh, nice.
I did that for a couple of years. I was in charge of branding for all of our clients, so I really learned a lot about what it takes to sell a product, a service, a company, and that, to me, I think has really uniquely qualified me to be able to do this kind of stuff on my own and not really needing a lot of other help from a publisher or a marketing team or anything like that. And when it comes to the other stuff that I do now, because I did make a transition from that job into a freelance art career, I do this sort of stuff. My comic book work is more of my main job, my main gig. But I do have lots of part-time jobs that I take, just to kind of help supplement and pay the bills. So actually, just the other day, I was finishing up a cover commission I was doing for someone. So,
and so that kind of makes me wonder. If you're the art director, you've got a pretty good position. I don't know exactly, but usually the income is a lot better than entry-level graphic designer. So what made you say, I think it's time to start making comics?
That's a good question. Because I know that when I originally, because this was back when I was, I think think it was about 27, 28 years old. So I remember telling my dad that I was going to make this move, and he said, "Are you crazy?" But for me, it kind of just came down to my own well-being, my overall well-being. When I had that job, as much as it was a well-paying job, and it had a lot of status with it, I just was not happy. I was very miserable. I put a lot of work and a lot of time and just a lot of myself into the work that I was doing. And to me, I felt like the people we were doing the work for didn't appreciate it. The boss
Yes.
and the people I was working for didn't necessarily appreciate it as much as I felt that they should. And I think all of that just kind of was telling me at the end of the day, this is just not the right thing for me to do, but I need to figure out what the right thing is. And one of the coworkers I had, one of my designers, told me one day, or asked me one day, I should say, have you ever thought about getting a table at a Comic-Con after seeing some of my work? And the thought had never crossed my mind. And it was at that moment that I realized, I could do this. There's nothing holding me back. So I went ahead and did it, and about 6 years later, I'm here. So
Ah, very interesting. And was there anything like, I guess the question is, like, did you see anything in the market itself that made you say, you know what, this actually might be a viable career option? Like, in addition, or not a career option, but like this is a good time to get into the market, as opposed to, you just needed a break, or what made you jump with both feet, I would
yeah,
say.
you know what? I think it was I just think it was my own blind belief that I could do it. I know that may sound quite naive, but
Nope.
I personally just believe that if you have enough passion, if you have
Hmm.
enough determination, you can do anything. And I think we're starting to see, especially with the help of crowdfunding, because when I began this, crowdfunding wasn't as big a thing as it
Right.
is now. So, I just think we have the tools. We just have to be committed to what we're doing, and really have the passion for the projects that we do. Because when we have the passion for it, it shows, it comes through. And I think that really does attract an audience. It's just, it does take some time to build an audience.
Yeah.
But in my mind, I've been having lots of conversations about this stuff with people, and everybody seems of pretty like mind that this avenue of, kind of independent self-publishing, creators in the comic book world, I think is kind of going to be the new trend going forward.
Yeah, I definitely think so. I mean, unfortunately, the big two plus Image are really kind of disappointing in quality, and there's definitely a reason why manga is eating traditional American comics lunch.
Yep.
And it's interesting because in some ways it reminds me of a comic book store in the 80s. Of course, the big two were most of the books on the shelves, but you would go in there and you would see all sorts of crazy independently published comics, and these were in times before you needed a company like an Alterna or Vault, where if you didn't have some kind of publisher, you just weren't getting in. These were books that people would self-publish, and I don't know how they found all the stores pre-internet, but somehow they did.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's what I'm talking about, the determination to make it so. I just truly, honestly believe that if you've got the passion to make it a reality, especially now, there's nothing that's really holding you back.
Mhm.
The only thing that we all need to watch out for is just overall quality of work.
Yes.
My biggest problem with the big two and Image and a lot of these other larger publishers, it just, to me, it seems like either the art isn't up to par with the writing, or the writing
Mhm.
isn't up to the par, or par with the art, or it's just not working on both accounts.
Yes.
At least that's the way that I feel when I read most of my comics. I was just talking to somebody about this the other day about how, when I go to the comic store, I usually buy with my eyes first because I'm an artist. So
Yes.
that I come home with a stack of books, but then of that stack of books, there's maybe only 2 or 3 that actually have really good writing to live up to, the excitement that I had for the artwork, and that's, to me, is disappointing. So,
Yeah, I kind of see two problems with the big two. One, of course, is exactly what you said. The level of the art and the writing, they're so uneven, and I think due to revenue, like they can't really afford to pay, frankly, higher quality talent.
yeah.
But at the same time, something happened with the editors where the editors don't edit. It's the assistant editors seem to be in charge of the actual editing, and they don't know how to edit.
Yeah.
Like maybe a lot of them come from a literary background, where maybe like English lit or journalism majors in school,
Mhm.
but you get some of that art and it's completely janky. It's like there's no one who
I
has any art background looking at this stuff.
Yeah, and I could not agree with you more. It's one of the saddest things that I think I've noticed in a lot of the more modern, issues. There's just so much bad art that I just
Mhm.
can't believe, gets past so many people. Even the people who are printing it. If I was in the print
Yes.
shop and I'm looking at it, I would be like, "What is this crap?" But I agree. I don't understand why we don't have more people that have multi-talented, aspects to their editorial skills. It's not just
Mhm.
about making sure that you're crossing you're dotting your I's and crossing your T's. You got to make sure that everything is working together. That there's a certain amount of branding that goes along
Right.
every single panel, every single page. It's insane. When I was a creative director, there was nothing that left our art house that I didn't put my stamp of approval on. And if it
Exactly.
ever went out and there was a problem, I always took full responsibility for it. And that's the way that it should be. And like you were just describing, it doesn't sound like anyone wants to take responsibility.
Yeah, I think too in watching people in various YouTube interviews and even a lot of the stuff, Marvel's own promotional videos and stuff, to be honest, a lot of them don't seem like they really want to be there and they're not that interested in the material. And it almost seems like, well, I have to do this in order to get to the next thing. Whereas even though you had guys like Stan Lee, who was never really comfortable with the fact that he made comic books, um, you had people who were really trying to put their all into um, into what they were putting out.
Right, right, absolutely, and we need more of that. And I think we see more of that in independent comics and the comics that we're seeing that are popping up on Indiegogo and other crowdfunding sources every day.
Yeah, I really wonder what's going to shake out with it, and then I kind of wonder too, how will it affect the direct market? I have noticed huge problems with the direct market since the '90s.
Oh yeah,
Ever since they started taking comics out of grocery stores. Um,
yeah, yeah.
but are we going to see more books like Confederate Monster in the future end up in comic stores? I mean, right now we have one problem, which is COVID. I Actually, Ryan and I don't live too far from each other. Maybe I'll ask him one day if there's any shops open near him, because I don't think there's any shops within a 30-minute drive from me now.
I mean, I have a couple within a drive for me. I'm closer to a city. I'm closer to the Detroit area, but
Mm-hmm.
even just the other day, we were driving out and about my girlfriend, and it was my birthday just the other day. So she said, do you want to go to a comic book store? And I'm like, sure, I guess we can. And I think we drove to about 2 or 3 of them in the area, and they were there. They were just closed.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, I don't know where that's going to leave the industry in the future, but speaking of writing and editing, so you definitely have the art background. How do you have trouble with either writing or drawing, or like do you have to use different parts of your brain, or does everything kind of like work together?
Um, That's a good question. I would actually say that there's a good amount of synergy between my creative brain, and my art side and my writing side, because I as you said, I'm definitely more classically trained as an artist. However, when I was in art school, I took a lot of writing classes. I took a lot of creative writing
Mhm.
classes. I was very interested in storytelling. Um, I don't really know where or when or how I got so invested in telling stories, because I remember even as a kid, a lot of my friends were very into sports and that kind of thing, and yeah, I love sports, sure, but they were watching every single football game that was on TV all the time, and I would rather just watch Batman the animated series or something like that, you
Yeah.
know. So for me, I think when it comes to writing, since I don't really have a lot of training in it, I think a lot of what I lean on in my writing is just my experience with the good culture that I have absorbed in my 35 years.
Hmm.
I really do feel like, I when I find something that's really amazing to me, I try to figure out why. So if I'm watching a movie and I get to the end and it just blows me away, I need to rewatch it because the second
Hmm.
time I want to figure out what the creator did, what the director did, what the writer did, in order to either fool me or to lure me in or whatever they did to make me get so invested in it that it transformed my worldview, or it made me think
Hmm.
a different way. That's the kind of stuff that I love. So when it comes to writing a story, that's my goal. Is I'm always trying to subvert the expectations of the reader, so that at the end there's a different perspective learned. There's something more about the human condition for the reader to now think about in greater context.
Hmm. Um, so another thing I happened to notice while perusing your website, you teach now, right?
Actually, I just moved away from teaching, but yeah,
Oh,
I
okay.
taught for quite a while. I taught for a couple of years at the college level. There's a art school not too far away from where I live, that I taught a lot of digital art. I taught a lot of traditional art, so I got a chance to kind of just um, get lots of different areas of teaching art and design. I actually taught lots of different age groups too. So not only did I teach college age, but I got to teach adults, and I taught a lot
Oh,
of
nice.
um, taught a lot of summer classes for kids too, which was a lot of fun. They really enjoyed my little comic book classes that we would do in the summertime. So
So I'm kind of curious. Back so I lived in China for a few years, and I did some kung fu there. And the my teacher, he's like, "Hey, when you go back, you have to start teaching people right away." And I'm like, "Why?" And he said, "Because back in the olden days, you were an apprentice to a master for like 5 years plus, but we don't have that kind of system nowadays.
mhm.
And when you teach, you actually learn more from the students than you're giving to the students a lot of times. So by teaching these classes, how did that affect your art? Uh,
It affected my art tremendously. I couldn't agree with you more. And it was something that kind of I was not prepared for when I first noticed it, because I started teaching just at the summer camp level. We were just doing kind of 1 week classes. And then eventually they started to notice, okay, this guy knows what he's doing, so we'll try to give him like another class and see how he does
mhm.
that, until I started getting asked to do some college level classes, and through that process, you're absolutely right. You learn how to teach, and in teaching, you almost are teaching yourself along the way. So for me, I had to kind of not just relearn concepts, but then relearn
Mhm.
how to teach it and how to distill it down in a simple format so that other people can understand it. And when you go through that process, again, it's like you're reteaching yourself about this whole process. And I found it fun because then I got to kind of put my own spin on it, where I know what the subject is, I know what I need to teach,
Hmm.
but then they gave me the freedom to say, you teach it the way you want to teach it. So if you've got a different
Nice.
perspective, or you've got a different method, feel free to write the syllabus or write your lecture how you want to do it. And I love that. That was a really great opportunity for me to just ask myself, okay, how do I communicate this in the easiest way that I possibly can, but also put my own kind of spin and twist on it as well? Because I love just talking about theory, art theory,
Hmm.
design theory, the human condition. To me, that just is just, I can talk about that all day.
And did you find that your own art style, like the changed visually?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I started to notice that I was paying more attention to the basics. I was paying more
Hmm.
attention to value. I was paying more attention to my line weights. I was paying more attention to contrast. And it was funny because my teacher critique or kind of brain would flip on more often as I was drawing, and I would realize, oh, like you would probably say this to a student if you presented this in a critique, so you may want to, fix that or clean that up.
Hmm.
And I think actually what happened more often was I think I decided not to be as lazy, and to just like go
Uh-huh.
in and make the change and not, settle. So that was a big change too.
Um, so in teaching or in seeing students go from a pretty basic level to a really professional level, I sort of see similar things going on in the world of indie comics.
Mhm.
um, like you were saying, now there's no reason that anybody can't just launch their own book. But it seems to me, uh, some people are jumping in with both feet, which is cool. But since they don't have a more classical training, and especially going through the crit process, go through critiques, um, sometimes you see like parts of the art are great, but other parts are not great. What would you suggest to someone who maybe they like to draw, um, and they're like, yeah, you know what? I want to make a book. What would you suggest to them in terms of resources or online classes, or things that they should be looking for to improve their own work?
Sure. The number one thing I tell everybody that's just getting into trying to figure out how to translate an artistic ability into more of a comic book sequential skill, storytelling skill, because there's a big difference between being able to draw,
Hmm.
being able to tell a story visually and carry a reader through it without losing their attention. And for me, the Bible of all of this stuff, and what I tell everyone first to go pick up a copy and read through thoroughly, is How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way.
Hmm.
Because to me, that book is got more information in it about how to be a successful comic book artist than any other book that you're ever going to pay $1 for. So I would definitely, if you don't have a copy of it, if you've never read it or never seen it before, definitely add that to your library. Um, as far as becoming a better artist, because I do feel you that there are a lot of even very high level artists that have gotten
Hmm.
professional gigs. I see some of the published work and I go, yeah, this artist can draw faces really well. This artist might be able to draw muscly men really well, but can they draw a curvy female body well? Can they
Yeah.
draw hands really well? Can they draw the natural flow of the human figure well? Sometimes that's where you're kind of lacking in your ability. You might be
Hmm.
good at a couple of things, but there might be some areas that you may just want to be honest with yourself and say, "Hey, I need improvement," and practice those things. For me, I know I'm not as strong with hands. So every opportunity I get to draw a hand, I draw a hand. Just the other day, I was drawing an illustration of my Frankenstein's bride character getting electrocuted, and I had both hands and the gesture drawing off kind of panel. And as I'm drawing it, I'm realizing I am taking the easy way out and like cutting off both hands. This is a little too Rob Liefeld for me, so I'm gonna pull these arms in a little bit more and be able to show the hands. And in doing so, I elevated the illustration to a whole new, place that, I'm 100% more happy with. So it's opportunities like that if you take it, it's going to elevate your work and it will be that much more successful.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. So, and on that theme, just want to show a few samples from the book itself. And one of the things that really stuck out to me when I was looking at it, it's here somewhere. Give me a second. Is the color palette. So in pretty much every comic book review I do, I complain about color. To me, color is like, there actually have been some campaigns on Indiegogo that I was following, and I was like, oh, this art looks really nice. And then when they colored it, it was like, oh no, I can't buy that. Yeah. Well, first of all, let me start off by saying thank you for not using those like police light palettes, like the magenta and cyan, which just drives me nuts. But all the colors, like especially on this, I assume this is a double page spread.
Yep.
How do you go about choosing the colors? Because even though you have a full palette, but everything in this book looks like it belongs together. You don't go from like Mickey Mouse to Spawn. It's
right. Yeah, I have an eye for branding. It's something I've been developing for many years now. And so when I approach any project, I want to make sure that project has a very unified look. If it doesn't have a unified look, then your audience is not going to recognize it at any point within the sales funnel, if you will. So what that kind of means is it doesn't matter if a potential reader is looking at a page from the comic book or looking at a web banner on the internet. If they look at it, they should instantly recognize it as, oh, that is that book, or that is that product, whatever it may be. So when it comes to the color palette for Feast or Famine, it's set during the Civil War. It's a Frankenstein horror comic. So, I can't go overly saturated. If you go overly saturated with it, it just doesn't sell the tone or the mood of the time period or the story. So for me, I just decided we're going to go super desaturated with it. I'm going to pick lots of, kind of muted earth tones, to be indicative of the Civil War period. But I do want to still, utilize color theory to push and pull the eye to where I want it to go. So in this page in particular, there's lots of plays between cools and warms, so that I can push the eye from that upper corner in the left to the other side where the other fire is. The light in this panel spread is really what's pushing the eye from the top of the left side to the other kind of middle section of the right.
And the other pages, same kind of consistency. We won't go through the whole book, but even you look at the 2 pages before, you have similar palette, although it's lighter, different time of day, different setting. It's so nice to see when it's very clear that colors were well thought out. They weren't like, I got to get some guy at the end to color it because people like color.
Well, coloring is kind of my thing. On Feast or Famine, I colored that book to save myself a little bit of coin. And I personally, I felt like I needed to do something on that book. I couldn't, write it and let it be done. So I really was excited about the opportunity to color those pages that Joseph Cooper drew for me. But when it comes to other jobs that I've done for other people, I think a lot of people just think of me as a colorist. So I do tend to get a lot of job offers to be a colorist. So I've been fortunate enough to just have a lot of practice doing it, and it's really helping me to elevate my own work.
Well, I mean, it definitely looks gorgeous. It's certainly a nice standout in the crowdfunding market right now.
Thank you. I really aim to bring my best to the table whenever I'm ready to present it. So I'm pretty happy with how things are going so far.
So, when you start a project like this, when you decide, okay, I'm going to do everything, how do you start? What's your process for starting?
So I typically begin with a rough outline, like most any kind of writing project. I typically write it out as a long form, kind of like a novel, because I'm just trying to get down the basic kind of narrative of what's going on. I'm not worried about dialogue. I'm not worried about a lot of descriptive, fun words. I'm just literally, it would be the boringest book in the world if you just read my first draft. But what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to just get an idea, right? Just trying to get a framework of what's happening in the story. And then after I have that framework, I adapt it to a script format so that I can work directly from that when I get into the artwork stage. And that's where I start to really develop the dialogue and figure out how long each scene is going to be, trying to really figure out how I can create really nice peaks and valleys within the story, so that I'm ending on a peak. I sort of start where I ended, and I carry the reader through. But then when I get into the drawing phase, I treat it just as if I'd be working with a writer. So if I have an issue with the writing and the drawing, I kind of go back to the writing, and I have that freedom to kind of change things on the fly. Heck, even when I get into the lettering phase, I realize, oh crap, like there's just too much words in this panel. I need to take some of the words out. And that's what I like about it, is I have the freedom to kind of jump back and forth in the process if it serves the overall final product.
Yeah, kind of a nerdy question. But one of the things that I noticed in reading through this, the word bubbles are not outlined.
Yeah.
Is there a reason for that?
I kind of just like the clean look of it.
Okay.
I think it's probably more of a personal aesthetic than anything. But I think the other reason why is because I really kind of wanted the heavy, gritty line work of the work to kind of stand alone. The quality of the line work is a bit rough. I use a rough pencil. I shouldn't say pencil, but like a digital brush. It's not clean at all. It has a very rough edge to it, and I think it really adds a certain level of texture or grit to the look. But when I started playing around with the bubbles, the edges were like a little too clean, and it kind of clashed with the look of the line work. So I think that was another reason why I decided, you know what, I don't even know. I think this thing is just fine without the lines.
Yeah, it's interesting because I don't think I've ever seen that. Certainly for back in the day, you would have to have those lines around the bubbles.
Yeah.
But it's interesting to see this in more modern stuff, and in some ways, I think it seems more like it's got the right amount of pop. Like if the lines were too thick, it would be too overpowering, and I think the artwork would recede too much. You would glance over it, whereas too thin, and it just, I don't know, it just sort of gets more muddled.
Right. Absolutely.
All right, sorry, that was overly nerdy.
No, it's okay.
So I did have another question too. I see it looks like a guitar behind you.
Yes.
How important is music to your work?
It's one of those things that's it's again part of the experience. It's part of the brand. When I first started drawing this book, I put together a couple of quick kind of speed drawing and coloring videos of
Mhm.
the first pages, and they're actually available to view in that little viewer at the top if you scroll through. There's a couple of just YouTube videos of me drawing and coloring some of the
Okay.
pages from the book. And if you watch those, there's a bunch of different pieces of music that I was able to kind of throw in the background.
Mhm.
And it's to me again a cinematic quality that maybe not a lot of projects are going to bring to the table to elevate the mood of the story. But yeah, I always am thinking about as immersive of an experience as I can present. And hey, maybe we'll find some music in a stretch goal. I'm not sure what'll happen. But maybe it'll show up.
Interesting. I think James O'Barr, if I'm remembering correctly, he actually used to have like a page in the beginning where it would be like, hey, if you're reading this page, go listen to this song. If you're on that page, go listen to
Yeah,
that song. So he would almost make his own soundtracks.
I had an idea about doing something like that. I wasn't sure about the whole viability of like make or using other people's like copyrighted songs, but like I guess doing like a playlist,
Mhm.
I mean, if you're not charging for it,
Yeah, yeah.
it'd probably be just fun.
Um, and is there do you have like a go-to playlist of like I'm drawing versus I'm coloring versus I'm writing? And can you listen to music when you write?
What's funny? I can't at all. I
Okay.
need absolute silence when I'm writing. I think it's mainly because when I'm writing, I feel as though I need more space to go inside my own head and poker.
Mhm.
And I think when I have music or a TV going on in the same room, yeah, my mind wants to be plugged into that. So I need to be kind of separate myself from other stimuli in order to really feel like I'm 100% in the story that I'm writing. But when it comes to drawing and coloring, I almost always have something that I'm listening to. I actually tend to prefer listening to TV um,
Mhm.
when I'm drawing or coloring. I loved listening to The Office, and Parks and Rec, and that kind of stuff. I also sometimes I'll listen to some meditations,
Mhm.
especially if it's like late at night and I don't want to be overly stimulated. I'll try to put on like a meditation just to kind of like close out my day. But if it's early in the morning, I tend to put on. I like a lot of different genres of music, but if it's
Mhm.
early in the morning, I try to put on something that's really, a lot of energy in it, like EDM or rock or something like that, just to kind of get my blood pumping.
Oh, very cool. All right. So getting back to the campaign itself, what else do you think is important for people to know?
So there's a couple of secret perks. So
Oh.
yeah, perks that you can't see unless you're either a subscriber of my newsletter, which you can become on my website, or if you're a Patreon of mine. So I actually have a Patreon page for
Mhm.
Confederate Monster, where you can watch the creation of the entire series page by page. So I do posts probably 2 to 3 times a week whenever I have an opportunity to finish a page. I show every part of the process, so you get to see the rough blue pencil stage, the tighter red pencil stage. Then I go into the inks, the colors, and then the letters. So you get to kind of just see the entire process, along with any kind of behind the scenes stories, anything that kind of inspired that scene, or
Mhm.
what I decided to draw, or any changes that I made from the beginning of vision that I had to what actually became the page. You get to kind of read about those stories too. And so they get a really nice perk. They actually get I'm not going to tell you what it is, but whatever it is, they only get it. They get it for only $1.
Wow, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
And so just looking at these, the book should be shipping in July.
That's the plan.
Nice.
Yeah, because I'm pretty close to finishing the 3rd issue. So, I mean, I would imagine that by the time that the campaign is ending, I'm going to be pretty close to ending the 3rd issue. So at that point, it's just a matter of getting everything finalized, sent off to the printers and the people making the perks, and then getting it back and shipped. So I'm anticipating about the July time frame to be able to deliver. However, I am kind of just waiting to see what happens with the campaign. So if it starts, or if it continues to go really well, because I am planning on going into in demand for a bit,
Sure.
then we'll see. So, but my tentative plan is to shoot for about the July area.
Very nice. And about how long does it take you to do everything on a book to make one?
To do an entire book, or entire just one page?
An entire book, let's say.
Okay, so to do an entire book, I would say, it probably takes me about 2 months or so.
Okay.
Yeah, about 2 months.
That's not bad.
Yeah,
6 issues a year.
Yeah, I mean, mainly the thing about it though is it's mainly because I'm doing all of it myself. You know, it'd be a lot easier if I were just doing some of the coloring or the drawing or whatever, and passing it off to somebody else. We can get it done a lot faster that way. But since I'm doing it all myself, it takes a little bit longer. However, I will say that I can crank out a page pretty quickly. I tend to not try to kill myself. So I know a lot of guys out there, they just grind and try to crank out, a page a day, every day, all day long. And for me, I try to stick to 2-3 pages a week. And then, I try to keep the rest of my time for either myself or any other part-time, gigs that kind of come my way that week.
Oh, nice. Well, I know you have had quite the whirlwind in the last few days. I don't want to keep you too late. I'm sure Detroit time, you probably need to get some sleep at some point.
Well, I was up late last night with my buddy Ryan Wynn, but this isn't too late.
And that was a great stream, by the way. Anyone who wants to check out some fun, go check out Ryan Wynn. He has a Wednesday night Ink-along series, and you were on last night drawing the monster from Confederate Monster.
Yeah, Ryan was very gracious to invite me on last night, and even more so to feature one of my characters, and drew his own little version of it, and everyone had a lot of fun with it. I was really happy to see what people did with it on Twitter. It's super fun, and actually in that same vein, I should tell you that for those who are listening, I am planning on running an art contest for this campaign. We're going to be drawing your version of my cowboy Frankenstein, because my Frankenstein this book is kind of cowboyed out. It's got his cowboy hat, a trench coat, and spurs.
Cool.
So we're going to be doing an art contest in order to win a print of one of my original illustrations that I'm going to be making next week. So look out for that. Details are forthcoming very soon.
All right. Well, everyone, go check out Confederate Monster. It looks like a great buy. Let me see if there's, just refresh this real quick. I think there are 3 early bird bonuses left. It looks like a great deal.
Yep.
Dave, thanks for stopping by. Everyone, if you could click the like button, subscribe, and leave any comments for Dave down below.
Awesome. Thank you for having me, Zane.
Thanks for coming.